Welcome to Search History. In our very first episode, we're going to try to attempt to answer the age-long question, who is the strongest man who has ever lived? According to Giants Live, the premier strongman federation, some may historically consider Hercules as the strongest man in history. In the Victorian era, Louis Zer. In modern times, Zydrunas Savickas has won the most podiums across all strongman competitions. However, he has won World's Strongest Man 4 times, and Mariusz Pudzianowski has won World's Strongest Man 5 times. The article continues, Brian Shaw has also won World's Strongest Man 4 times, however in terms of total podium wins, he is 4th behind Zydrunas Savickas, Mariusz Pudzianowski, and Hafthor Julius Bjornsson. However, a notable moment in Brian Shaw's career is when he came 2nd place to Zydrunas Savickas in World's Strongest Man in 2010 after a sandbag fell off the podium. If the bag had not fallen off the podium, that would have given Brian Shaw a total of 5 World's Strongest Man wins. If Brian would have won, he would have been tied for the most strongest man wins along with Mariusz Pudzianowski, leaving Zydrunas Savickas behind at 3. However, in order to answer our question of the strongest man who ever lived was, I think we need to consider more than just podiums and the number of World's Strongest Man competitions won. We also need to consider individual records on lifts such as the deadlift and the log press, and other considerable feats of strength. Many consider the deadlift to be the be-all, end-all lift to determine overall strength. The current deadlift record is held by Hafthor Julius Bjornsson, in which he was able to lift 501 kilograms in a somewhat controversial competition hosted by Rogue. Eddie Hall, who was the first man to deadlift 500 kilograms, still has the record for the highest weight in a sanctioned competition. Currently, and undisputedly, Iron Biby has the record for the axle press and the log lift, 217 kilograms on the axle and 230 kilograms on the log lift. However, it is worth noting that both Eddie Hall and Hafthor Bjornsson have won World's Strongest Man, where Iron Biby has not won any major strongman competitions. Now we know that strongman is not the only strength sport, so let's also take a look at powerlifting and Olympic lifting. Let's start with powerlifting. It is 100% worth noting that there's 2 different types of powerlifters. There's classic powerlifters and there's equipped powerlifters. Classic powerlifters step up to the weightlifting platform wearing their weightlifting shoes, their singlet, and a weightlifting belt if desired. In the powerlifting world, this is known as lifting raw because you're not using supportive gear like benching suits. By contrast, equipped powerlifters can wear as much supportive gear as possible. Things like bench and squat suits, knee wraps, and weightlifting belts often allow lifters to accomplish much heavier lifts because some of the strain is taken off their muscles. This is why you'll see much higher numbers in the equipped category than in the classic. So for that reason, we are going to probably just stick with examples of raw powerlifting. It's also very well worth noting that Olympic lifting and powerlifting have different weight classes. For the sake of the video, where we're looking to find who the strongest person who ever lived was, we're going to focus on the heaviest lifts as opposed to people who may be stronger pound for pound. Maybe we can do another video about that. Currently, the highest total in powerlifting belongs to Jesus Oliveras with a squat of 1,036.1 pounds, a bench of 600.7 pounds, and a deadlift of 903.9 pounds, with a total of 2,540.8 pounds. Next up, we have Olympic lifting. Again, weight classes aside, we're going to be focusing on the man who has the highest total between the snatch and the clean and jerk. And that man is Lasha Tolakadze. He currently has the world record for both the snatch and the clean and jerk, as well as the total between both of those. The snatch being at 225 kilograms and the clean and jerk at 267 kilograms. Alright, well let's start to narrow things down a little bit. Nice thing about Olympic lifting and powerlifting is that the results are pretty objective. They either have the highest number or they don't, where strongman is a little bit more subjective, a little bit more a few more elements and things to consider and look at. But don't worry, we'll get back to strongman in just a minute. I think it'd be pretty tough to argue that both Jesus and Lasha are not the strongest there's ever been in their respective sports. One thing to consider when comparing these two is that Lasha owns the world record on both of the events that he competes in. He has the heaviest snatch and the heaviest clean and jerk, where Jesus does not have the record for the deadlift, bench, or the squat. He just has the record for the highest total among those lifts. I think it's also fair to argue that there's a much higher level of technique in Olympic lifting, where there isn't quite as much in powerlifting. I think it's pretty common that someone who is stronger overall would not be able to lift as much as someone who has better technique in a specific lift, especially Olympic lifts. I also think there's more limiting factors as to how strong someone can become versus how well someone can learn a specific technique. So for that reason, I'm going to have to give this one to Jesus. In terms of just raw strength, I think Jesus is stronger. Now back to strongman. So the 4 contenders that I have for the GOAT, or the greatest of all time in strongman, is Marius Pudzianowski, Brian Shaw, Zydrunas Savickas, and Hafthor Julius Bjornsson. Now even though Marius has 5 World's Strongest Man titles compared to Brian's 4 and Big Z's 4, I'm going to have to put him in the 4th slot here. I would argue that during each of these athletes' peak, I think Brian, Zydrunas, and Hafthor would beat Marius in competition pretty regularly. And it also seems like the general consensus when people are debating on who the GOAT of strongman is, most people are debating whether it's Brian Shaw or Zydrunas Savickas. Now, for that reason, I think I'm going to put Hafthor in the 3rd slot there. Now, I think most people would say that Brian Shaw is the greatest strongman of all time if he had that 5th World's Strongest Man title. He's tied with Zydrunas at 4, which is why I think it's a big debate right now. But like I mentioned earlier, in that 2010 World's Strongest Man competition, if that bag hadn't fallen off the podium, Brian would have won that title, beating Zydrunas in that competition, and he would have 5 World's Strongest Man titles, and Zydrunas would have 3. So I think that, among a few other reasons, I think I'm going to put Brian Shaw as the greatest strongman of all time. Okay everyone, this is what it's come down to. So we have Brian Shaw or Jesus Olivares. Now, it's pretty tough to compare because strongman and powerlifting are such different sports. I guess one thing we could do would be to think about how would Brian do in powerlifting, or how would Jesus do in strongman. I think both would do very well, and it's honestly hard to say who would do better. I think they would edge each other out in their own respective sports, even if they were to train the other sport. So that doesn't really give us a whole lot to go off of. I think just the nature of strongman and the variety of the feats of strength that they have to perform, in my opinion, I believe that gives the side of strongman the edge. And that's going to give Brian Shaw the edge in this particular case. So that is my personal opinion. I believe Brian Shaw is the strongest man to have ever lived on the earth. I would love to hear in the comments if I missed anyone, if you agree, if you disagree. Bring up some points if there's any that you thought of that maybe I didn't. Of course, there's a lot of people I didn't mention here. But I think I covered all the points that I wanted to, and I do believe that Brian Shaw is the strongest man who has ever lived. Well, folks, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. This is the first video we're posting on this channel. Oh, hang on. I just got a text message. Let's see, from Eddie Hall. Oh, you know what, folks? He just said that Khan Baba is actually the strongest man who's ever lived, so I guess that settles it. I was wrong. It's Khan Baba, everyone. Well, folks, again, if you're the type of person that is constantly Googling random things because they want to know the answer to random questions at any given moment, this is definitely the channel for you. So again, please like and subscribe, share, yada yada yada, all that good stuff. Till next time, thanks for watching.